All right, are we ready to go? Axial, radial, and a combination. Yes, there we go. Wide load. I don't know what to say about that. Axial, radial, and combination. Exactly, to keep everything. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. But when it does, you're right, gang, it's a big deal. That does bring up a point, though, I didn't mention about splines versus gears. I will try and remember, because no one will remember to ask me. What if somebody remembers to ask me? That'd be awesome. The difference between a spline and a gear. You can look it up. We use splines, and they look an awful lot like gears. But for example, your oil pump shaft has got a spline on one end, and then the other end is the gear that meshes inside the oil pump to pump oil. But the end that goes into the engine is a spline, and that slides. The male part of the spline slides into a female grooved area for the spline to run in, and there's no relative motion, so it's used as a drive. And you should know that, like, her propellers go on a spline shaft as well. Magnetism. Yeah, they mount on a smooth steel shaft, so they can't go anywhere. And that's what happened with my motorcycle one, is I slid it off the shaft, and then you need to really carefully hold all those little needles in place. And without the inner shaft in place, they're free to go flying. And they did. Nice, most of you got that. A sealed bearing. And don't take those seals off. That's kind of the end of the life of the bearing. Oh, shoot, I just gave that away. There we go. Okay, so the ball I'll sort of buy, but a tapered roller is better. Um, Deep groove ball, absolutely. Standard ball bearings are not terribly good with thrust loads. So that's why we've picked the tapered roller. You're not, yes, a ball bearing can handle a thrust load, but they're not good at it unless it's a deep groove. All right. And in the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't put this on a test question. I would modify it to make it a little bit more clear. Oh, didn't I cover this? I thought I talked about this. Four of a kind. Let me go look it up. I think a four of a kind beats a straight flush, but I don't know. I got that online. I played poker years ago, a little bit, but anyways, I usually put some fun questions in. When you get to level 3, you're going to find more, and you need, no, of course not. You need to learn up your bone up on your Canadian trivia, because Mr. Miller, who's now teaching level 4, was teaching level 3, and he got behind and had me write him a bunch of Kahoots. So I put trivia question in each one, and they were always Canadian trivia. Ouch. That's a little depressing from the teacher's point of view. In fact, I don't think that's ever happened. Okay, which takes higher load, a needle bearing or a plain bearing? Of the roller bearings, of the anti-friction bearings, yes, the needle bearing is the highest load. But let's just go back to my PowerPoint here. Which do you think is going to take a higher load? This needle bearing? Here's a pointer. This needle bearing or a plain bearing? This plain bearing here. The friction bearing, the plain bearing, and think about where we put them. We never use these needle bearings for our crankshaft. I shouldn't say never. I think there are some engines, but virtually all engines use a bearing like this, a plain bearing, because you've got that incredible force from the crankshaft pushing down with 5,000 or 8,000 pounds. Yarp. Okay. Is anybody confused? Plain bearings are the winners. Plain bearings are the winners. Okay. Back to the Kahoot. Well, that's sad. Yes, you did. You got concentrated on the anti-friction, but you missed the point. The plain bearing beats them all. One ring to rule them all. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I mean, all the answers are right, but all of the above is the most right. See how you do here. A needle bearing. Needle bearing. Oh no. Why was this hard? Why was this hard? Why would be people picking a tapered roller over a needle bearing? Was this just rushing, trying to make sure you won? Is there misclicks? I don't actually understand why people were picking tapered roller over a needle bearing. All right. Well, without any feedback, I don't know what else to say. I said they're a hard steel bearing. No, needle bearings give more friction. Remember, ball bearings give the least, needle bearings give the most. Ball bearing is going to hurt the most if you step on it. A needle bearing lying on its side is going to hurt the least if you step on it. That's how I remember. Oh, nice, people got this one. Okay, Braden, are you clear on what you missed though? Does it make sense or are you still confused? Trying to move at a pace that kind of covers everything and has us out before noon. All right, make a slice in the bushing with a hacksaw. I will admit I have had to do it, not on an airplane, but I have had to do it on other stuff. It is really scary because you're about to wreck the parent part, right? Um, a suitable drift to press out the old bushing, absolutely. And if possible, cool the new bushing before you put it in. Even if you just toss it in your handy deep freeze, that can make a difference of a thousandth of an inch and just makes life a lot easier when you're sliding things together. Plain bearings as opposed to roller bearings. Roller bearings are checked by feel. Plain bearings, how do we check a plain bearing? Yeah, close visual inspection or a dimensional check. Plain bearings feeling for roughness doesn't tell us too much. NDT, what does NDT stand for? Non-destructive testing, thank you. So technically speaking, visual inspection or dimensional checks, those are all forms of NDT. Practically speaking, when we see NDT, we mean one of the more exotic methods, either a dye penetrant inspection or X-ray or eddy current or one of that variety of things. Right. So close visual inspection, but I really prefer feeling for roughness. Why is close visual inspection not as good as feeling for roughness? Well, most of the time you can't take apart your anti-friction bearing to see what's going on inside. Like most ball bearings are assembled and you just can't get inside them. So it's just a feeling for roughness is the best you've got, and it's actually a really effective way to check them. All right, well, I know nobody got 15 out of 15 because no one got my one question that I thought was fairly straightforward, but